Hello and welcome to the Sands of Time review channel. It's your host Sammy Thunder. Again, today we're here with Watch Express and we're here to discuss some of the new releases, this time from Grand Seiko. We've gotten two new releases from Grand Seiko that I'm interested in myself, mainly because I do have a watch that features the same material properties as these new Grand Seikos, and that's the use of Ever Brilliant steel. So what we have here is two new Grand Seiko models featuring the 44GS case with reference number SLGA013 and SLGH009. So one's a spring drive and one's a high beat, and these use the new calibers. So we are getting the 9RA2, for example, in this spring drive caliber here. So as you can see, that's the movement. Very nicely finished. Obviously it's not as decorated as the automatic version. It's the way the Japanese do it, and you get the power reserve on the back. These feature 5-day power reserve, which is impressive, incredible. Not only that, the spring drive caliber is probably one of the most accurate hybrid calibers out there. Honestly, through my own experience of spring drive, I would get around accuracies of within a 7-day margin. I wouldn't even see a deviation of 1 second. It was very accurate. So when you're getting this with the new movement, with the crazy finishing, you got the skeletonized the skeletonized rotor here, power reserve as well, that's on the back, so you don't have any power reserve on the front that's obscuring your movement, obscuring the front of the dial, and obviously these are limited editions, so you can probably tell here this is a limited of 550 pieces, and the spring drive here sells for around 14,195 Australian dollars. Now we do have a jump in the price, but we are getting a 44GS case watch, and the standard bracelet that you would get on, let's say, the SBGA 375, which is a base model 44GS spring drive watch, but you are getting a better movement. You are getting the Ever Brilliant steel. Now, Ever Brilliant steel is corrosion resistant. Well, it's more Seiko claims that is the most corrosion resistant material used, and you can probably see here that it has a brilliant white hue to it. I can personally attest to this because I own the SLA043J, which is a 62 mass limited edition watch, and honestly it makes owning a 62 MAS with this material feel like a pure bargain. But anyway, what we have here is that this specific stainless steel used, it has a Pren, or a pitting resistant equivalent number, of 1.7, which is higher than the grade of steel that you'd see in most high-end watches. So Pren is a widely accepted standard used to measure corrosion resistant. So obviously what we're being told here is A, this material is extremely corrosion resistant. B, it's probably better or more corrosion resistant than most of the watches, the stainless steel used in most of the other watches. And C, that this has a beautiful white hue. Now, in my recent experience, I got to see the SLA055, which also uses Ever Brilliant steel and uses the 6159 case design. So obviously, its slab has a huge slab of Zaratsu polishing, and look, it's not a night and day difference, between, let's say, a watch with an Ever Brilliant steel and a watch that doesn't. It's not a night and day difference. It is noticeable. It is a bit more brighter. But in no way, shape, or form, when there are people out there saying, "Oh, this metal is dull, this is yellowish." I mean, that's just, in my opinion, I think that's a pathetic take. See it in person. If something's gonna be yellow metal, I mean, I wouldn't be buying it. But people, so just judge it judge it yourself. See if you think it's worth it. So what we see, here is it's very typical of the standard 44GS case watches. The same bracelet, no change to the clasp, so no micro adjustments. You do have half links for better, wearability. And this is the caliber that's used, and this is the dial. So they've used these kind of dials before. It's in person, it's, to me, it's not as impressive, but nonetheless, it is a beautiful looking watch. It's a black dial watch at the end of the day, but it has, you know, some unique texture. So it's pretty cool. So apparently this is the 55th anniversary of the 44GS case, and that's why we have this here. Onto the high beat version, you get the same kind of dial, except you have a blue dial instead of a black dial, and you have a gold seconds hand, whereas we had a rose gold seconds hand for the spring drive. And obviously, you know, you get the text. You get the high beat, 36,000, you know, beats per hour, 80-hour power reserve. Here, we have spring drive 5 days. Now, one of my gripes with these new watches, and just say with high beat in general, is why use such a basic font on such a high-end watch? What are you... So you have a font here. That's beautiful. Grand Seiko font. I think, you know, to elevate the elegance of this watch, maybe, you know, don't use such a basic font here. This just looks like time, you know, just Arial or Times New Roman font. It's, you know, you won't really notice it when you pick up the watch in person. You'll be fine with it. You'll be mesmerized with the dial. But at the end of the day, I think this could have been done or executed to a much better standard. You know, so that's kind of one of my takes of the watch. I do think, you know, the date window here is fine. With being a white background, it's all right. You know, you can prefer to have a blue one. But it's alright in this case. So what we have here is the high beat in the 44GS, again with Ever Brilliant steel. So this high beat caliber is damn beautiful. And you can see this is a Horology caliber. So you're getting the bonus power reserve. You're getting that polishing on those, you know, bridges. You know, you have the screwed balance here. You know, there's a lot going on here. Again, a limited edition of 550 pieces. There's a lot going on in this watch. It's a Horology piece. I personally, in this case, I would take the high beat because I feel like there's much more going on, you know, with the dial itself. But let's see how these actually compare with some of the older iterations or the base models. So what I have here is the SPGA 375, a watch I owned for a while, but I got a bit bored of it. And it features the midnight blue dial, you know, and this midnight blue dial, it changes based on color. And the way I saw it was it had three colors. In total, you know, in very low light, black. In ambient light, midnight blue, beautiful midnight blue. And then in bright light, it was like a purpley hue. And when we look at the specs of this watch, we have a 40mm diameter, 46 lug to lug, and a thickness of 12.5. Now this is a spring drive. I'll compare it with the spring drive here that we, you know, the new release. We have dropped the thickness by, you know, about 0.4. The lug to lug has been increased. So they've increased the lug to lug on this watch. Diameter of 40, which is fine. And, you know, with this, the high beat in particular has reduced the thickness by a lot compared to the Mount Awade. I know that one was a very thick watch. So the high beat, I think, is doing a great job here. But just with the spring drive, a 0.4 reduction in thickness, you know, it is a reduction. It's good. But you know, you're looking at these prices, 14,000, and this is close to 16,000. These watches are expensive. Albeit they're nice, they're good, they are expensive. So that's one thing. But you know, if this is something, you know, you've desired for a while, I think, you know, this is something you can potentially go for. I'd be curious to see how the Ever Brilliant steel actually pays off. You know, they've used the brighter metal. I would like to see how the Zaratsu, you know, and everything, you know, works with the light. I did notice the SLA 055 being a bit lighter in tone, but it's not a day and night difference. It's not like this. You need to have Ever Brilliant steel. You know, you need to have 904L stainless steel. It's not the case. That's simply not the case. I hope people understand it. I like what they've done, but please go and physically check the stores and see these watches for yourself and decide on your own. I think they're great. They're great watches. I think the price is a bit hefty, which is to be expected with the upgrades made. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about were the new sports releases from Grand Seiko. So the first sports release is the SBG E275, which I think is a spectacular looking watch. I think this is, this thing is so close to being a perfect sports watch, but I think it lacks in certain ways. So what I mean by that is, I think, when you look at the specs, this is a 44mm diameter watch. Okay, that's fine. It has a 50.8mm lug to lug. Smaller wrists already are going to struggle to wear this one. And then you have a thickness of 15. This is pretty much a 15mm thick watch. And I don't think, GS has done anything to kind of, make this seem like a thin watch, like they've done with, other models, like the SBG M221. That case design made the watch seem thin. But when I had a watch similar to this on my wrist, I did notice the thickness. But this watch here, I mean, honestly, this watch is so beautiful. I would, I myself would own it. But again, Seiko, again, with limited editions, it's a limited watch, limited production. So we'll see how it goes. And, we have the GMT caliber for the spring drive. So the thickness is noticeable because, we're using the GMT caliber for the spring drive, and somewhat understandable there. So a little bit of forgiveness there, but at the end of the day, it's a thick watch, albeit a sports watch. But the dial of this watch, sublime, indices, I've seen this, so I know what to expect here. It's a beautiful watch. Now the next watch we have here is the chronograph version, and features a similar dial, or if not the same, and we have this beautiful chronograph here. Now, I love the indices on this watch. I actually think the chronographs are underrated. I do think there are some flaws. For example, these chronograph pushes, they are, in images, they seem to be quite big. In person, it's honestly fine. But again, 16 mils of thickness, to be expected with the chronograph. But if GS managed to, reduce the thickness on these, I think this could be a major hit. Especially this dial layout for a chronograph. This is super unique. Typically you have a dial layout where you have, the 3 here, or you have bi-compacts layout, but this thing you have two sub-dials to the right-hand side, one to the left-hand side, and then you have a power reserve here. I actually think this is a great looking watch. Expensive, looks great. There's nothing much I can say here. I mean, again, there's so much going on here that you can forgive the thickness on this as well. It's a GMT, it's a GMT, has a power reserve, it's a chronograph spring drive. The amount of moving parts in here is insane. So, if this is something you really, really like, I mean, I'm not here to stop you. They have made improvements here with the clasp, which is nice to see. In the new sporty watches, you got that longer clasp, and that's the movement here that you have. So yeah, it's they're good watches. Limited to 700 pieces here, and the other one was limited to 1500 pieces, as you can see with the case back. So this is what I kind of wanted to go through in Watch Express. Please, like, subscribe, or dislike. Let me know what your thoughts are on these pieces. I'm here to have a conversation and learn from you as well. It's not just a one-sided thing. These are kind of my thoughts on the watch. Thanks for watching. It's the Sands of Time exiting. Peace.